Dear William Cockburn, it is an honor to welcome you to the International ORP Foundation Executive Interview Series 2025. The series spotlights industry leaders who are revolutionizing workplace health and safety. We are delighted to have you on this journey.
It's a pleasure to be here, Lilia.
Thank you so much. Let me introduce you to our audience. William Cockburn is an Executive Director of the European Agency for Safety and Health at Work, who plays a key role in shaping policies that protect workers and promote a culture of prevention. With a strong focus on digitalization, emerging risks, and vocational training, William is dedicated to ensuring that businesses and employees are prepared for the future of work. Is everything correct?
Yes, that's right, absolutely.
Great. So before we begin, let's give our audience a quick introduction for the 2 days conversation. We will start by exploring key priorities in tackling emerging workplace risks across Europe. Then we will discuss the digitalization and artificial intelligence. Next, we will dive into modern workplace challenges, and we will wrap up by discussing the role of global collaboration and the 25th anniversary of the International ORP Foundation. Shall we begin?
Yep, absolutely.
Great. So, as an executive director of the European Agency for Safety and Health at Work, you're leading efforts to advance occupational safety and health across Europe. What are the agency's key priorities in addressing emerging workplace risks?
Well, it's very good timing for that question, Lilia, because we've just approved our next 10-year strategy for EU-OSHA. The European agency has been working here based in Bilbao for 30 years, and now we're embarking on this next period. So we've been discussing with our stakeholders, and that includes European governments, trades union and employer organizations, how we should be working and what should we be focusing on. So just to explain for your viewers in very short terms, the agency works in three main manners, three strategic lines of action, if you like. The first one is that we carry out research, we gather data through surveys and so on, and we analyze it to provide an evidence base for policy making and to further research. Then the second pillar that we have, the second strategic line of action, is where we're developing guidance, tools, online interactive risk assessment tools, for example, and we're doing that to help prevention of risks in the workplace. So there we're targeting more prevention experts, intermediaries, trades union, employer organizations, and so on. And then the third pillar, the third strategic line of action, we're carrying out awareness raising through campaigns, or we're carrying out networking activities like working with you to generally improve the OSH prevention culture, to raise awareness about health and safety at work, to spread knowledge. And so with those three different pillars, we're tackling different topics. And for example, at the moment, we're working on supporting compliance, which is about how to get better performance, better compliance, particularly amongst micro and small enterprises. Or in another piece of work, we're focusing on the health and social care sector, which I'm sure you realize has had a lot of exposure since the pandemic in terms of media attention on the risks that are present there. And it really is a broad range of risks. In terms of risks themselves, we've been focusing extensively on digitalization, both research, and now we're in the middle of our campaign raising awareness about the risks and challenges and opportunities. And looking to the future, we're going to be working a lot on climate change and how that is relevant for occupational safety and health. So a lot of work across all of those areas. We're only a small organization. We're only 65 people here in Bilbao. So you can see it's quite a big challenge with some quite limited resources.
That is such an ambitious focus. And what do you see as the biggest challenge in tackling these risks?
Well, the biggest challenges for the agency are in having a real impact across the 27 EU member states when we are quite a small organization with quite limited resources. There's one strength that we have, and that is that when our agency was created, all of the governments in the European member states they committed to nominating a national authority to collaborate with us. And that national authority sets up as well a national network of trades unions and employer organizations. So in that way, although we're a small agency, we have this this resource in the countries that participate with us from the European Union, and we're able to have a much greater outreach and also collect more details, more data from the national level. So we collect data through those contacts, and as I said, we also carry out our own surveys at European level. So for example, we interview the person responsible for health and safety in a company, and we ask them about day-to-day challenges, day-to-day practices, what motivates them to prevent risks and what they find more difficult and more of a barrier. And we interview 45,000 representatives across European companies. So we're able to provide a good picture there, and that helps us to identify the main priorities for action and to take that forward.
Thank you so much. It is so true that addressing emerging workplace risks is essential. And especially as technology continues to reshape how we work, as we look to the future, digitalization, artificial intelligence, and automation are having a profound impact on workplace safety and health. William, the agency is currently leading a pan-European campaign called Safety and Health in the Digital Age. How do you see the main challenges and opportunities of these technological advancements influencing occupational health and safety?
Well, as you say, Lilia, it really is the challenge that we have at the moment in many aspects of our lives. And it's nothing new, the use of IT. It's been with us for decades, but I think what's particularly challenging now is the speed of change that we're seeing and the nature of that change. So it's becoming more pervasive. It's affecting more aspects of our daily life and our daily work. And we've been trying to explore this through the research that we carried out over 4 years, desk research, survey research, and it's quite surprising, some of the results. For example, the use of digital technology is almost universal across enterprises, but only 1 in 4 enterprises are actually assessing the occupational safety and health risks with digital technology. And these changes that we're seeing are affecting not only maybe what you would think like automation, the automation of cognitive tasks, for example, image processing in the medical sector, or the automation of physical tasks, like we know with robotics or advanced production chains, but also forms of employment. And I think around the world, we've seen an incredible growth in online digital platforms, which has thrown up a lot of challenges when the people working through these platforms are designated as self-employed. In most countries, that means that they're not subject to occupational safety and health protections of the legislation. And this has been an area of much debate and action at European level. There was a European directive on platform work, which sought to put a presumption of employment as the basis, as a starting point for online digital platforms, and also to give some transparency in the use of algorithms, because these are also tools that we see can result in pressure and maybe stress, an increase in intensity of work. So these are OSHA aspects, particularly on online platforms. We're seeing changes in the way workers are being managed, with artificial intelligence being used in human resource analytics type software, people analytics software, it's sometimes called, and where this data again is used to intensify work or micromanage, that can give rise to important psychosocial risks. We're seeing also, and particularly since the pandemic, a big increase in remote work, normally telework from home, but also from other locations. And we know that there are some risks associated with that in terms of ergonomics, in terms of psychosocial risks, isolation, intensification, and so on. But across all of these areas, it's very important to highlight that there are also opportunities, and that these negative aspects are not inherent to the technology. In nearly all cases, the risks arise through an improper or less than ideal design and implementation of the technology. So what we're trying to promote through our campaign are the success factors. So, for example, putting the worker at the center of the design when you're designing these systems or these tools or these robots or production systems, and consulting. Even these systems, the human resource analytics that are based on quite close surveillance of workers, can be successful and useful, but so long as they're developed with the open consent and information and participation of the workers and their representatives. And we're focusing particularly on the opportunities that digitalization offers with new monitoring systems, for example, monitoring exposures in real time to temperatures, to dusts, to chemicals. So, the technology has a very positive side to it. And rather than sort of running a sort of scary negative campaign, we're wanting to highlight the challenges and also focus on the opportunities. To give you some idea as well of how extensive these technologies are nowadays, we carried out a survey amongst workers. We interviewed 26,000 workers just a couple of years ago, and we found that when we asked them about the use of digitalization at work, 1 in 3 said that their task allocation or allocation of time or shifts was being done using digital technology. 1 in 3 said that their performance was being rated by third parties using digital technology. And 1 in 4 said that the technology was being used to supervise their work or their behavior. And you won't be surprised to know that 1 in 3 also said that this resulted in an increased workload, and nearly half said it resulted in them working alone more than they did before. And 1 in 5 said they had reduced autonomy. So there are clear risks there, but as I say, also opportunities.
Digitalization brings so much potential, and building up on the risks, how can companies ensure they're using technology to enhance rather than replace worker safety?
Well, at the heart of it, like so many aspects of occupational safety and health, is the risk assessment. And there's a lot of potential to improve in that area. As I said, only 1 in 4 enterprises are currently including digitalization in their risk assessments. Interestingly, we asked that question in 2019, and we asked it again in our last edition of the survey 2024, and we have seen an increase. So whether it's as a result of awareness raising or generally a reaction to issues, we're seeing that enterprises are realizing that there's a need to include technology and digitalization as an aspect in risk assessments. And as I said, the participation of workers, I think, is crucial. There are good practice examples that we've identified that we're promoting through our campaign. And when both the workers and their representatives and the employers are both on the same page, they're understanding what the goals are, why are these changes being made, what are we trying to achieve with the introduction of this technology, then that shared ownership is where you get success. If, on the other hand, this technology is introduced or imposed in some way, it will build up a sense of mistrust, and you may even end up with defensive behaviors that are aiming to circumvent and cheat, if you like, the systems that are being put up. An example very close to our interests in terms of the management of occupational safety and health, for example, that traditionally has been with both workers and managers at the table, each bringing their own perspective, and workers bringing to that table their knowledge of the day-to-day tasks, the detail of what the job is involving, how it's changing, what risks might be arising. If suddenly to that table the employer is arriving with a mass of data from surveillance systems, whether they're cameras, keyboard, click monitors, or whatever, then that's going to upset, for example, the balance that we have over years in the management of occupational safety and health with workers' participation. So really to stress that there are opportunities, but there are some basic steps that have to be followed in that. And I would say risk assessment, worker consultation, and participation are the key ones.
There are so much new challenges, and thank you so much for this example. So, whether we're speaking about the change in how people work or shifting employment structures and growing psychosocial risks, as workplaces continue to evolve, what do you see as the most pressing occupational health and safety issues that must be tackled in the coming years?
Well, that's a big question, isn't it? I would say perhaps that I don't know to what extent in our viewers' countries this is the same situation, but in Europe, certainly at the moment, the priority is competitiveness and making sure that we have a competitive economy. And I think as OSH practitioners, as OSH experts, we have a priority to make a link between good occupational safety and health, good quality, decent work with good working conditions, and that this is a prerequisite for a competitive economy. Sometimes it's presented as the possible result of a good competitive economy. If our economy is doing well, we'll be able to afford good jobs. I think we need to argue that it's the reverse. In the situation we're in at the moment, one of the main breaks, one of the main restrictions on our economy is the lack of skilled labor. And that's to do with birth rate, it's to do with the aging population, but also an important factor is where our skilled labor is leaving the workforce, either temporarily because of a work-related injury or illness, or long-term, or taking early retirement or some disability related retirement. And so we really do need to focus on making sure that these absences from work are kept as low as possible, that our workers can be as productive through their life course, and also in many countries, because of pension pressures, are going to have to work until they are older. And that's really going to depend on the quality of the jobs. At the moment, there's still, in many cases, when we're talking about occupational safety and health, a big focus on injuries, on accidents, particularly fatal accidents. In a way, that's because they're easy to count and the statistics are readily available. But more and more, at least in Europe, they're representing a smaller and smaller proportion of the overall burden. We have, just in terms of fatalities, for example, in Europe, we have 3,300 fatal injuries per year, approximately. The estimates for work-related illness deaths are 170,000. Now, many of those deaths will happen after a long period, once somebody has retired, related to exposures that they had during their working life to cancer risk factors, for example. But really, that burden is so much greater on illnesses, and yet I don't think we have that focus. And when we're talking about lost days of work, lost productivity, the biggest causes still are the psychosocial risks, which account for the second highest number of absences, and the first one is musculoskeletal disorders. But with psychosocial risks, they tend to be longer in duration. They're long in musculoskeletal disorders, back pain, upper limb disorders, and so on. But psychosocial risks tend to be even longer, so account for more days. And these are really the ones that we see increasing. This survey I mentioned earlier, when we were asking workers about their exposure to digital technologies, we also asked about health outcomes, and 1 in 4 said that they're suffering work-related stress, that they're suffering depression or anxiety related to work, and nearly half said that their work stress had got worse since the pandemic. And These lead to negative outcomes that then result in work days lost. So 1 in 4 reported the work-related stress or depression associated with burnout, and 37% reported overall fatigue related to work and feeling exhausted. And again, this is linked to burnout. And why I think this is such a priority that we in the OSH community need to make this link more explicit is that we're not seeing these arguments. We're not seeing these arguments when the political discourse is addressing how to deal with a shortage of skilled labor. Often we refer to skills and education, or we hear about having the right migration, making sure that we've got skilled migrants coming into the country, and not so much about making sure that the skilled workers that we have in place at the moment are not falling ill because of these exposures at the workplace.
These are some growing concerns. And building up on that, how could companies, in your opinion, better support employees' mental well-being?
Well, I go back to what I said earlier with digitalization, and that's carrying out a risk assessment that includes psychosocial risks. And what proportion of enterprises actually do this and how they do it is something that we've been monitoring in our survey that I mentioned earlier of workplace risk responsible persons. And again, we are seeing an increase in the inclusion of psychosocial risks in risk assessment. We are seeing an increase in the proportion of companies that have a policy on stress, for example, or a workplace policy on bullying and harassment. I would say that there are big differences within Europe between countries. And to us, that indicates that where there are programs to raise awareness amongst companies, where there are tools developed, where there are support programs, where the Labour Inspectorate is providing support and advice on how to deal with psychosocial risks, then this is leading to more preventive action in the workplace. There are many tools out there. So sometimes it's a case of raising awareness and enabling the employers to find those tools. And we develop, for example, online interactive risk assessment tools on issues related to psychosocial risks. And in 2026, in fact, our next 2-year campaign will be on mental health at work. So there's much to do. But if an employer doesn't start by identifying the problem, typically through a risk assessment, and as I say, there are good tools out there to help you to do that, then the preventive actions won't be taken, and the problems won't be prevented. Having said that, our survey also shows that it is considered still to be a more difficult or more complex issue to address, and one of the main barriers is a lack of willingness to talk openly about mental health issues. And again, that's something that we're seeing changing in society more broadly, again, with big differences across countries. But talking openly about mental health is something that's changing. So in that line, we also asked workers whether they thought that speaking to their manager about a mental health problem would affect their career negatively. And there were enormous differences. And we see that as an opportunity. So if in some countries workers feel that they would be able to openly discuss this with their manager and it not have a negative impact on them, then that means there's something there that we could maybe transfer and learn from in other countries, in other member states. So I think I'm optimistic about the possibilities, and as I say, the trend is positive, and we're really looking forward to running a campaign on this with our network in 2026.
This is so well said. Communication is a key. And moving on, addressing workplace safety challenges requires a global collaboration. When experts come together, they create solutions that have a lasting impact worldwide. William, as the International ORP Foundation celebrates its 25 years of advancing occupational risk prevention, what are, in your view, the most valuable outcomes that global gatherings like these can achieve for the future of occupational safety?
Well, first of all, I'd congratulate you on the fantastic work that you've done in ORP over 25 years. As I said, here at EU-OSHA, we've been going for 30, so more or less around the same length of time. And when I was talking about our three strategic lines of action, the third one was about this promotion of a positive prevention culture, and the awareness raising and the networking, which really is at the heart of what you do, is a priority that we very much share and value. And I think through that, what we see is that, we're living in a globalized world where we have very common challenges. It's quite common to go to conferences, to gatherings, and to really be, I think, surprised by the degree to which we have common challenges, and we're working on the same issues, and hopefully having the same sorts of successes. And as I mentioned, there are differences of approaches and there are differences of outcomes across countries, and that raises the possibility of learning from each other. Not everything is transferable, but always I think there are lessons to be learned. And that sharing of insights, sharing of knowledge, whether it's at the technical level where we're sharing access to data sets, our survey data is all freely available, or whether it's exchanging on how we see trends evolving. We've been carrying out a series of forecasts and foresights, which again are being used increasingly amongst global partners. This is all building on the knowledge and really improving, hopefully, then practice and prevention of risks. And that other side, on the one hand, the research, but on the other side, then the opportunity to exchange good practices. And those can be good practices at the policy level or at the practice level. So, in terms of useful tools and guidance, we produced recently some guidance on working in high temperatures, and it's been enormously successful, not only within Europe, but beyond. And that's just one example. And I think also, just to wrap up on this point, apart from that exchange of knowledge, I think that by coming together in these global gatherings, we're also able to raise the visibility of occupational safety and health. And this goes back to what I mentioned in the priorities, and ensuring that the importance of occupational safety and health for our societies, for our economy, is more visible. And here, if I can allow myself a little bit of criticism for us in the OSH community, is that sometimes we're so good at speaking to each other, so good at interacting with each other, that we don't focus enough on translating our messages to other policy areas. And that's so important, because at the end of the day, OSH is integral to many aspects of the economy and society. And at the end of the day, we also require resources to be able to do what we're doing, whether that's resources for labour inspection, resources for prevention services, or for research and data gathering. And there's still a lot to be done, it has to be said, across all of those areas. That's certainly a conclusion of ours. So I would say, finally, that the visibility that such global gatherings give is also more important outside of our own world.
That is a powerful remark. And thank you so much for such a kind words for congratulating with the 25th anniversary. And building up on that, how could we ensure that the momentum from these events continues afterward?
I think to continue talking to each other. I think, for example, your series of videos is one example, but we each have this role as ambassadors of occupational safety and health. And what we need to remind ourselves always is not to only speak with those who we know are engaged, to preach to the converted. We need to go out and look to those who haven't come across our area, who haven't appreciated just how important occupational safety and health is to them, because I think is relevant across all areas, as I was saying. And so, be ambassadors, go out there, reach out beyond our own community. And that would be my main message.
So impactful. Thank you so much for such an eye-opening conversation. And before we wrap up, I would like to remind that the 25th anniversary of the International ORP Foundation is just around the corner. William, do you have any final words of advice to our audience?
Stay connected to ORP's excellent resources and go along to the final event, I would say. And also, please keep an eye out for EU-OSHA's information and products on our website. It's all available for free download. And as I say, we'll be launching our campaign in 2026 on psychosocial risks, mental health at work, focusing particularly on overlooked groups and occupations. And we'll be delighted to hear from you. So yeah, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you, Lilia, and I hope it's been of interest to your viewers, and look forward to collaborating further in the future.
Thank you so much. So we want to wish to everyone to stay safe, stay proactive, and follow our official channels for more thought-provoking interviews like this one. Bye-bye.
Absolutely.